28 years later, just watched it, and this is a sequel to 28 Days Later. It's a movie from roughly 30 years ago, around early 2000s, I think. So not exactly 28 years, but more or less. This so the review part of this is yes, go see it for whatever my opinion is worth, and then the rest of this is spoilers. Just me discussing it with myself in front of a camera with a microphone. So 28 years later, set in. So there was a sequel to 28 Days Later, 28 Weeks Later, which was very different from the original. So the original is a little bit more painterly, a little bit more of a slower pace. It's very different. It's not a typical zombie movie. In a zombie movie, there's a lot of different things you can be talking about with zombies as the tool for talking about those things. You can be talking about death. You can be talking about consumerism. You can be talking about the feeling of isolation and the feeling of being solipsism, being the only real person, and the sense that other people aren't real. So in 28 Days Later, there's some things that are innovations to the zombie genre at the time. So in a lot of older zombie movies, zombies are very slow moving. They kind of ponderously lurk toward the protagonists and then aim to destroy them. I apologize for my dog barking. Then in 28 Days Later, suddenly you have fast zombies. And these fast zombies run at the protagonist. They're a threat in a different kind of way that slow zombies are. I think this is one of the first movies where the zombie phenomenon is described as a virus. In a lot of early zombie movies, it's some sort of sci-fi effect, supernatural phenomenon. In the earliest zombie movies, it was based on this sort of folkloric idea of raising the dead to become slaves. And then in Romero movies, the explanation sometimes is just a meteor goes by and something from space makes the dead come back to life. And so here it's a virus, and then now we've seen a few different media properties where it's a fungus. It's The Girl with All the Gifts, and it's The Last of Us are both using the zombie fungus, Ophiocordyceps unilateralis, that infects ants as inspiration. So that is a fungus that controls the behavior of ants and makes them do things that promote the reproductive cycle of that fungus. So this was kind of in between that. The opening scene in 28 Days Later, where the protagonist has been in a hospital for majority of the zombie outbreak and wakes up later on mid-outbreak, was sort of reused or homaged by The Walking Dead. So this was a very, I think, influential zombie movie. Initially a very low-budget zombie movie. Now, they cleared big portions of London, which is not cheap, I imagine. And they filmed a lot of it on consumer cameras, on XL1 Canon cameras that were, expensive if you were a consumer, but they were, inexpensive compared to film cameras. And that gave it a very particular look, sort of grainy and low dynamic range, and up until the end of the movie, in which they go back to film to kind of show that there's hope. And there's some in the middle of the film is kind of this sequence of hopefulness, and then it turns out that the humans are the enemy in the end. And then the sequel to that, 28 Weeks Later, is more of a generic zombie action movie. So spoilers for 28 Weeks Later. There's a guy who abandons his wife during the zombie apocalypse. And then all the zombies have starved to death because there's no one left to eat. So England is empty. No survivors, no zombies. And a team of Americans comes to repopulate England, and they establish a zone of control, which they think is safe. And some kids come back. This guy comes back with his kids who are out on a school trip during the outbreak, and the kids escape from the zone of control to go to their mother's house, and she's still living there. And so the dad was a liar, and then they turns out she's a carrier, so she is, and that happens with diseases sometimes. Famously with typhoid Mary, who didn't become symptomatic, but was infected with typhoid. So the idea is the mother was capable of being infected with the virus without developing the symptoms of the virus. And so this is also what we believe. This idea is that these kids could also have the key to the biology of this virus to create a vaccine or something. So they take the kids. So they're trying to rescue the kids and get them off the island. And the end of the movie is kids get off England into mainland Europe, and it shows that now there's a zombie outbreak in mainland Europe. And so running toward the Eiffel Tower. All right, and that was also a long time ago. A higher budget than the original, shot similar to other mid 2000s zombie movies. Some action sequences where they have a helicopter flying down and cutting zombies' heads off with its blades and things. So now, 28 years later, does some retcons to that, which is fine. I don't think 28 Weeks Later is as loved a movie as 28 Days Later. And so if we're 30 years later and it takes like a few weeks for the zombies to starve to death, it doesn't work. There wouldn't be any more zombies. And then you're trying to make a zombie movie without any zombies. It's not going to work. So you've got to find a way to bring the zombies back. And so basically, and here's spoilers for the new movie, basically they retcon the part where the zombies all starve to death. And now some of them survive by eating worms, and some of them survive by eating deer. So, and part of what's nice about the way this is filmed is you get to see this idea of, well, how would nature recover if humans were gone, if there wasn't civilization disturbing the landscape anymore. And so this is really more my discussion of the film for people who have seen it. So this is no longer a review. This is my thoughts on it, and spoiler. The other way it's retconned is continental Europe has fought off the zombie apocalypse. So all I do is just have a line at the beginning of the opening crawl, the Star Wars thing, where it's like they just say continental Europe fought off the zombies virus, the rage virus. I was like, okay, so we just buy into it. It's fine. So a movie starts with, and the movie's structure is like a Bildungsroman. So this is a coming-of-age story of a 12-year-old boy, and he is a part of this group of people who live on an island that is separate from the mainland by a bridge that is only, you can only walk on it during low tide. And, okay, maybe that's a real thing. I don't know. But so they have this village. There's a village gate that someone's always supposed to be watching for stray zombies that wander up and then shoot them with arrows. And that is something. One of the themes here is the British have a history of archery, and so there are images of the Battle of Agincourt from films and things. Archers, and the children in this village are being trained as archers, and and they show someone fletching an arrow and using a spoke shave to make the shaft of an arrow, and doing some very old-fashioned woodworking to produce these arrows. Something that was kind of odd was, well, one of the advantages of an arrow compared to a bullet is that if you miss and the hazard is gone, you can then go retrieve your arrow. And they never really do that here. So maybe they're worried about contamination. Once it's been through a zombie's neck or something, the arrow is contaminated. They don't want to touch it. But once they shoot an arrow, it's gone. They run out of arrows fairly often. So that's a limitation. So the boy's growing up on this island. He goes to school, and they teach them the different kinds of jobs they can have. And I get the feeling that there was probably something in this film that was in a longer version of the film that was then cut. And you see little bits and pieces of it in the movie and then in the trailer. And so it looks like they have like these creepy masks as part of the island's culture, and like some weird stuff going on that doesn't make the final movie. So setting that aside for a moment, yeah, it's like an English village on an island. It's kind of isolated, and they have the protection of this land bridge, which also allows them to go to the mainland to fell trees for fuel and maybe hunt animals, go fishing, whatever. So they're kind of a self-contained area, enough people living there to have a semblance of civilization. They don't have any electricity, aside from hand crank flashlights. They don't really have anything from Europe or America landing there. No one is doing airdrops of supplies. They're just surviving. And we see later that, in fact, there are patrol boats that enforce a quarantine around the island. So if anyone tried to get out on a boat, they would get shot. And this is now an alternate history. So we see later on someone shows up with a smartphone and from the mainland and from mainland Europe. And so sometime between 2001 in the movie universe and 2001 of our universe, the smartphones were invented. There was a Steve Jobs in this world who made the iPhone, and there was an Android version of things. And okay, fine. The world has moved on without England, I guess. So he's growing up in this island, isolated, just learning what they think he needs to know to survive, and he's going to go out on an adventure with his father to do his first zombie kill. And so this is the first place where we see this theme of coming of age, where the kid is reaching an age where he can become an adult. He's 12. His mother says he's too young to go to the island. We get a sense early on there's something wrong with her. She's in bed. She's not feeling well. Her mind is kind of gone, so she's forgetting. She's getting confused, etc. So, he's gone across this land bridge with his dad. Everyone is like excited for him. He's like, "Go get it." And just a warning, no one will come to rescue you. Like, our rule for the island is if someone goes to the mainland and they don't come back, we don't send anyone back to help them, because that's how people have died in the past. And they show this like graveyard they have right next to the gate, the door thing. So he's like, "Oh, okay." But he's 12, and he's doing it to please his father, to go out into the world, and he doesn't want to disappoint all these people. And so they're kind of using like the cult tactic of love bombing. So they're love bombing him into thinking this is something he needs to go do, even though they show later on there's all kinds of jobs people can have in this society. He wants to be the brave guy who goes to the mainland and helps hunt and helps acquire things from abandoned houses and so forth. He goes across the bridge with his father, and his father is showing him how to hunt zombies, basically. Their main goal nominally is to find resources, I suppose. The only thing they bring back at the end is a frisbee. Okay. But they go to the mainland and they come across some zombies who have survived. They're obese and slow and kind of crawl along the ground. So there's different types of zombies, which is kind of like a video game thing, I guess. I don't know if they're setting up for a video game. In the first movie, the virus makes people like run up and attack people and try and infect them, spit in their face, blood, um, and like makes them angry, right? And here it seems to be doing something a little different. Like the worm eating zombies are all obese and crawl around on the ground eating worms. Um, so they're shooting. He like draws his arrow and shoots one, and there's one like sneaking up behind them, and the dad shoots it in the neck or shoots that one. And it's just kind of a tense moment because you see the zombie is coming up behind them, but they don't see it. Um, they do that. They go find a house. They explore, and some group has left behind someone tied up um, with a bag over their head who has the rage virus. So this the kid euthanizes the guy who's hanging there, and his dad is like, "Do it before it gets us." These two things that are happening are kind of like the dad's understanding of death. He's showing his son how to inflict death, how to kill, how to, and why you kill is for the praise of your peers. It's for to be masculine. Um, it's to protect yourself. So these are the reasons that you kill. This is what death is for. So they on the way back, they've said, okay, you've done your kill, you've learned about death, and now we're going to go back. And they come across another group of zombies. They have to stay the night because there's too many to kill with the number of arrows they have. They go hide in the loft of that house. So the next day, they're coming back, and the alpha zombie is still there. And this is another thing where they've changed the rule. They retconned the rules of the rage virus. So now instead of everyone zombie being the same, there's multiple types. And so this type is an alpha zombie. So it has superpowers, basically. It's super strong. And the dad's like, oh, it could take 12 arrows to fell one of those. And again, this is a difference from the first one. The first one, it's changing behavior, but it's not really fundamentally altering human biology so that we could take 12 arrows and still like run and like be active, right? But so here, that's another thing drawing from other zombie movies where zombies are unusually durable. That's not something I love there, but something they're doing. So the alpha zombie is chasing them, and they have a very tense chase scene across the bridge back home. And eventually the zombie is shot by the flaming arrow, and that's what it takes to kill it. They get home and everyone's celebrating. It's the coming of age themes. They throw him a party, and they lift him up on a chair like a bar mitzvah. And then the kid spots his dad, who has been caring for his ailing mother, is cheating with another woman who's much younger. And he's become disillusioned because his father lied to everyone about what happened. He hesitated killing the zombies, and his dad said, no, he didn't hesitate. He just killed. He was great, great shot. And so his dad is kind of like doing all this for praise, and he's a little bit more thoughtful about it. And he sees his dad. He learns his dad is a liar. He learns this way of dealing with death isn't the way he wants to deal with death. And he comes, and he's upset with his dad. They get into a fight. His dad slaps him for pointing out the cheating, and he goes to his mother and he says, look, when I was on the mainland, I saw this fire in the distance. So there's another survivor. And he spoke to one of the elders on the island, and the elder was like, oh yeah, that guy used to be a doctor. The kid's like, a doctor? He could help mom. So the kid decides, like, dad's not going to help her. I'm the only one who can do anything. I've killed a zombie, so I'm ready. So he takes his mom to the mainland to find the doctor. And they tromp through the woods. They come across a soldier from the mainland whose boat crashed and, had encountered another alpha zombie. And this alpha zombie likes to pull heads off of things with the spinal cord attached for some reason. Okay, I mean, it wouldn't work like that in real life, but fine, it's a movie. And this alpha zombie has a mate, a zombie mate. So this zombie mate is pregnant, and mother was with the kid, and she like recognizes that this other woman, even though she's infected, is pregnant, and she's going through childbirth, and like helps her through it. Like she puts her hand out, and they like do the thing to help like steady her. And the baby is not infected. It's been protected by the placenta, so they pick it up, and then the big zombie's there, kills the soldier, but not until the soldier kind of like gives another perspective on death, which is like he's doing this so that he doesn't have a boring life. He didn't want to be a delivery driver, and so he's just here to. At this point, he's just trying to survive. So he meets the soldier who kills. He's there with his mom, who's not going to kill. She's going to preserve life. So she like picks up this baby and feeds it water and carries it around with her. And eventually they find the doctor. The doctor has figured out how to cure, not how to cure, how to immobilize the zombies, but he doesn't kill them. So he has this mixture of drugs that I don't know how he still has enough after 30 years, but he has a mixture of morphine and something else that knocks out the alpha zombie. Somehow that still works, even though arrows don't kill the zombie. But knocks out the alpha zombie, and so they walk away with the guy. He looks insane. He's covered with iodine. So he looks kind of like the zombies who are covered with dirt and blood and such. And he has just yet another perspective on death. So he has been alone for 30 years, gathering bones of the dead and building a monument of the dead. And he says, a memento mori. It's a way to remember the dead. And the kid is like, can you help my mom? And he inspects her, and she has cancer. So doctor is like, oh, okay, I can't do anything. So like, well, what do you mean? I could go to the hospital. I could find one of the old medicines. And the guy's like, no, this is stage 3 or 4. It's in her brain. It's in her lymph nodes. She's going to die. And there's good deaths and bad deaths. And the best kind of death is peaceful. And I can help with that. So the doctor drugs the kid and like to help him be peaceful, and the mom like nods to him like, yeah, this is what I want. And so he euthanizes the mother and gives the kid her skull to carry to the top of the bone pile to give it the highest place. And he says, okay, this is a memento mori, but this is also a memento amoris, meaning a reminder to love. So this is, the final perspective the kid gets on death is this doctor's perspective, which is that death is a tragedy. He's a doctor. He doesn't want to kill even the zombies, but he wants to remember the dead, and he wants to remember to love. And so this is the person who has kind of held on most to civilization and humanity, even though he looks crazy and he's living out on the mainland and he's covering himself with iodine because he thinks it helps keep the virus away or whatever. So the kid takes the baby, carries it back to the village, and then sets off on his own adventure. So he's become an adult, or enough of an adult. He understands death and has his own perspective on it. And so now he was going to go out into the world and see the world. And the movie ends kind of off the wall where he meets ninja chavs and they kill some zombies to help him. And I think we're supposed to be a little bit wary of them because they're probably the people who strung the guy up in the house earlier in the movie. And the guy has a cross that's hung upside down. He wears it like an upside down cross, which is we see that guy as a kid at the very beginning of the movie during the outbreak. Like his dad is a priest, and his dad is like welcoming the zombie apocalypse as the rapture, and gives the cross to him. So this guy's perspective is probably going to be a little skewed in the next movie, but regardless, so the structure of the movie is interesting. I think there's been some negative responses to it online, where I think it's mostly like people who are expecting something like 28 Weeks Later, where it says regular zombie action movie, and instead it's something else. I think it's probably more like the first one in that it's a little bit more thoughtful and doing something different, doing its own thing, which I enjoyed. And you can nitpick stuff like the logic of how the characters behave, but that's not kind of the point of this movie. So that's like a game people play, right? Where you watch Star Trek and you're like, oh, but how could they have gotten to this star this quickly when it's 120 light years away and they only said warp 4, and that would mean they were traveling this exponent of the speed of light, which would mean like that's not the game this movie is playing. This movie is telling you like a fairy tale, and the fairy tale is, a kid who's shown different ways of viewing death, and then his process of reaching adulthood is the process of understanding his own way of dealing with death and his own ways of coming to terms with it, coming to terms with losing a parent and such. And I think maybe I would have been more in that camp before I lost my own parents, but having gone through that now, I can kind of understand more where this movie is coming from. And yeah, it's a really good movie. I think it's a thoughtful movie, and I would take it less literally. I would take it more as like you're looking at a painting, and the painting has symbolism. It's supposed to represent things, and it's not meant to be like a literal depiction of a scene. It's meant to be a depiction that makes you think certain things and feel certain things. And if you view the movie that way, I think it's better. And there's elements of that in the first 28 time unit movie too, where there's like a scene that's very like, because of the way they use the cameras there, it's very painterly. Like you see all these wildflowers, and the different colors are kind of pixelated in a way that looks like a pointillist, or not a pointillist, an expression. Not forgetting the painting style. I'm trying to impressionist. Looks like an impressionist painting of a field of flowers that they're traveling through, and so it's not a literal depiction of events, and it's the same kind of thing here. You have to take it a little bit with a grain of myth of like, I'm being told a myth, and so this is like a visual depiction of a myth, and it's using zombies as a way to talk about death and how we respond to death and how we deal with death, and so from that perspective, it's a really good movie.